Regent Bartell.
Here.
Regent Bradley.
Here.
Regent Burmaster.
Here.
Regent Conley Kiesler.
Here.
Regent Crane.
Here.
Regent Keene.
Here.
Regent Davis.
Here.
Regent Falbo.
Here.
Regent Loftus. Regent McPike. Regent Pruitt.
Here.
Regent Rosenzweig.
Here.
Regent Salas.
Here.
Regent Seminas. Regent Shields. Regent Shields? Okay. Regent Smith? Regent Spector? Regent Walsh?
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. The minutes of the February 9th, 2007 meeting have been distributed. Are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, I'd like to motion for approval. Take the motion second. All those in favor, please say aye. Just a couple comments. Monday, also the chairman of the audit committee had also heard the report, and I again reported that definitively we had stopped backup appointments, and the misunderstanding about backup appointments is that under section 36.17 of Wisconsin statutes, certain individuals coming out of faculty staff, classified staff, and academic staff are entitled to a concurrent appointment to go back, and that exists no matter what we do, and we once again told them that except for 36.17, there are no backup appointments. Those are current appointments. We have eliminated backup appointments, and in fact, 106 of 319 appointments have been changed, so that's a 33% change in less than a year. And as to the disciplinary rules, that just moved forward, and President Riley and our committee reports will report on the Walking-Shaw presentation. In the last month, I've spent a considerable amount of time with the executive branch talking about the budget, really trying to understand what the push and pull will be going forward. I think we should be happy with the budget that we have, and I would tell you that it really has very little to do with what I could say to the governor, but so much as what the system has performed in the last 4 years, its performance, and his understanding of the need for the growth agenda, and the people who have presented it to him, and what he's heard from the people of the state of Wisconsin. And the governor's position on this is that we are clearly the solution of economic development and not a problem. That said, the political process will now have its way with the budget, and we'll be back to discuss what's left over, and we'll have our own discussions at that time. That's the end of my report. I see no questions on that, and if there are, I'm sure you'll ask me in private. And you all have, so I have no doubt. I only have to do this 2 more months. Report of the March 2nd, 2007 meeting of the Higher Education Board. The written report has been provided. Are there any questions? The board's representative is Regent McPike. Moving on, report of the February 7th, 2007 meeting of the Hospital Authority Board. Written report has been provided. Are there any questions or comments? The board's representatives are Regents McPike, Rosenzweig, and Smith. At this time, we have a resolution for Regent Emeritus Gerard A. Randall, and thank you for coming. You know, for those of you Regents who weren't standing outside in the cold, Chancellor Keating said he really didn't care where we were. It's my pleasure to provide a presentation to Gerard Randall. And before I do that, I'd like to make some comments. Now, I first met Gerard soon after the election, and my first conversation with Gerard was when was he going to resign. And Gerard and I had that conversation for about 2 weeks, and he told me his position, and I am very proud to stand here today and tell Gerard thank you for not resigning, because what he did in the last 3 years was consistent with what he did in the past. He showed a great commitment to his responsibilities, and I think all of us who have served with Gerard know that he truly cares about the issues he raised and the issues that he focused on. He had an enthusiastic commitment for the underserved. He cared about inclusion and diversity. He constantly reminded us of what we said we were going to do and what we have done. He cared about athletes, and I don't mean in their performance on the courts or the football fields, but in academic and how we took care of them when they were done performing. And I think in many ways Gerard stood for a lot of the things that we sometimes forget. Just as important, Gerard was an active regent. He chaired the UW College Chancellor search. He served on the UW Superior search, the UW Oshkosh search, and there's another one that he'll remind me of. I think it was Whitewater. He was also served as Vice President of the Board of Regents and served as Vice Chair for 2 committees. And so it's my pleasure to read this resolution thanking Gerard for his many years of service. And I remind everyone he is the senior member, he's now emeritus, and we're very, very pleased with being able to do this because of the performance for the last 14 years, I think. 13. See, he's correcting me already. Resolution of Appreciation, Gerard A. Randall, Jr. Whereas Gerard A. Randall has served since 1994 as a dedicated and active member of the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents, and whereas he previously served as Regent Vice President and Vice Chair of the Executive Committee and completes his service as the Board's most senior member, and whereas as a member and Vice Chair of the Education Committee and its 21st Century Subcommittee, Regent Randall contributed knowledge about teaching and learning as he helped guide student services at all UW campuses. And whereas he served as an effective steward of state and university resources and capital investments across the UW system, as a member and vice chair of the Physical Planning and Funding Committee, and as a member of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee. And whereas Regent Randall helped highlight the achievements of accomplished UW academic staff members as a member and chair of the Selection Committee on Academic Staff Excellence Awards, and whereas Regent Randall has served as chair of the Personnel Matters Review Committee, as a member of the Committee on Student Discipline and Other Student Appeals, as well as a liaison to the Wisconsin Technical College System Board, Higher Educational Aids Board, and the Association of Governing Boards. And whereas Regent Randall took part in shaping the future for several UW campuses, having chaired the Regent Committee to select the UW Center's Chancellor, and having helped select leadership for UW Oshkosh, UW-Milwaukee, and UW Superior, and whereas he has been a compelling advocate for diversity and inclusion at all levels of the university, including pre-college programs and outreach to K-12 schools, and in the spirit of the Wisconsin idea, he provided a voice on behalf of students, faculty, and staff from all backgrounds. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System highly commends Regent Emeritus Gerard A. Randall, Jr. for his distinguished service and contributions to the citizens of Wisconsin and the institutions of the University of Wisconsin System.
David tends to forget the very first time that we met was at dinner the night that all of the appointments that had not yet received confirmation had been rescinded. And if you had said then what you said today, I would be no less grateful. Thank you very much. And to you, Kevin, thank you as well. I'd like first off to thank Governor Tommy Thompson for giving me this truly extraordinary opportunity to be of service to this great state through the University of Wisconsin system. I've been privileged to serve with people who have a belief in the power of higher education to transform lives and a commitment to help make this institution one of the finest of its kind in the world. My first seat at my first meeting was pretty much where it was at my last meeting last month, near the door with Chancellor's Row, or as I sometimes would refer to them, the Deacon's Bench behind me. Former Governor, Chancellor, and Regent Lee Dreyfus sat next to me and gave me guidance throughout my inaugural year. Michael Greevey was then board chair, a phenomenal leader that I consider to be the best that I've served under, along with Catherine Lyle, system president, whose tenure began 2 years before mine, and Judy Timby, whose difficult task it was to really keep me in line. I'll always be it took a whole staff of hers to do it, actually. I'll always be grateful for their wisdom, talents, friendship, and guidance, and that all of those in every capacity since in the 13 years that I've been a part of this body. I'd like to talk for a moment about symbols and the ability of symbols to convey messages more potent than mere words. We're here at the academic home of Regent Falbo, and I'm glad that this moment has finally arrived. Where's my guy? I'm glad for you, I'm glad for this state, and I'm glad for this system. I think you'll be a tremendous asset to this board and its work. In 1994, I was the lone African American on this board, appointed to succeed Regent Emeritus Harold Davis. This board today, thanks to Governor Doyle, is the most diverse it's been in its history. Diversity of opinion, experience, and values has always been championed by this board and by this system. To see physically the diversity of the Regents give many hope that efforts such as Plan 2008 are sincere and will ultimately be successful. Next year, this board must extend the promise of Plan 2008 for another decade. Your courage to do so was revealed with your imprimatur on the admissions policy this year. And I ask that you continue to be courageous for diversity in its many manifestations on our campuses. In 1994, we were continuing our review of teacher education programs throughout the system. I was at the time a Milwaukee public school teacher at Bell Middle School. Regent Spector, in fact, spent half a day in my class. I think he'll remember that. His car got covered with leaves by some neighbors across the street just prior to his leaving. I also remember, too, that at that time, I think I was the youngest member on the board except for the student regent, and including the student regent, I was the poorest member on the board. Teaching is my true vocation. This board signaled its interest in ensuring that every Wisconsin child have the opportunity to learn, achieve, and prosper by strengthening our teacher education programs, an effort that happily Regent Burmaster continues through her advocacy of PK-16 councils and the identification of resources to assist pre-service and in-service teachers. The Milwaukee Partnership Academy, which you've heard me talk about many times, is this state's premier PK-16 council, having garnered over $50 million and extramural resources to help bring every MPS student to grade level in reading, writing, and math. This body must continue to support these councils and encourage them to further the work of reducing the significant achievement gap among our state students. The role of UW-Milwaukee in our system and our state's economy has evolved over the last 15 years. Chancellor Santiago has given bold, fresh articulation to UW-Milwaukee's part in the system's efforts to enhance the Wisconsin economy, and in particular, the southeastern region's economic growth. The most recent symbol of this board's acknowledgement of the importance of UW-Milwaukee to our system's mission was the debate on and support for a School of Public Health for Milwaukee. Whether it's healthcare, engineering, education, and economic development, UW-Milwaukee is key to the vitality of the region and thus the state. This body did not always share that vision. Today you do. The package of supports in the state budget for the regional growth agendas must be aggressively fought for. It contains those pieces necessary to secure access and affordability for this state's college students. Success in the passage of the Growth Agenda Budget Initiative will be the new symbol of this board's commitment to economic growth and the sharing of prosperity in this state. Most of our system is comprised of campuses and institutions that are not Madison or Milwaukee. They are led by visionaries, and yes, I do mean that, selected by this board, but erratically supported by this board. At best, our support for them has been tepid. Whether it's facing down tuition hikes or advocating for fair compensation, we've oftentimes dropped the ball. One such occasion was the institutional reformation of extension in the colleges. We created one of the 3 largest units in the system. I know that we've had difficulty advancing the notion that faculty and staff deserve to be competitively compensated. In the process, we've gone down a treacherous path, I believe, of fixing some salaries in partnership with the resources of campus foundations strong enough and willing enough to do so. That's not good enough. Let's hike up our skirts and pants and wade through the political waters to address the need for proper compensation for faculty and staff. To do otherwise would be to our peril. I know that earnest work has begun, but we must finish this fight. And when we make modifications on the scale of the extension and colleges combine, we must consider the cost of paying someone who can make that initiative work and follow through with fairness. Pay Chancellor, please. Pay Chancellor, please. I will miss sharing a good glass of wine with Chancellor Sorensen. I'll miss the wit of Regent Salas and all the hugs. Regent McPike, I've got some unfinished business that you'll have to carry on. That is the fight for a statewide Division I basketball tournament featuring all of our Division I schools. And you've got some heavy lifting to do, most essentially twisting the arm of Chancellor Wiley. But finally, I will miss most attending commencements. I do enjoy seeing young people launch into the world a little braver, smarter, and hopefully more compassionate than when they first crossed our thresholds. With each handshake, the thrill of their moment becomes mine too. This state is in great hands, in yours and theirs. I know it and believe it all the more with each commencement day. The charge that I would leave to the graduates is to enlighten, to ennoble, and to be just. And if I may be so presumptuous as to leave you, my friends, that same charge in your individual capacities and your collective efforts as the University of Wisconsin, to enlighten, to ennoble, and to be just. Thank you.
That concludes the comments of the President of the Board. I turn it over to the President of the Business System.
Thank you. Thank you, Regent Walsh. And we will begin our session this morning with a presentation from our host campus, UW-Parkside. Before that, though, I wanted to say a word or two, and I think many of you know that one of my favorite quotes from Jonathan Swift, the Dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin, an Anglo-Irishman stationed in Ireland for his entire career, and he said of the Irish are a fair people. They never speak well of one another. So despite that, I'm going to say a nice thing or two about Jack Keating right now, because I think a number of you know that when Jack was lured here to be the Chancellor of UW-Parkside, it probably wasn't one of the high points in the history of UW-Parkside. We've spent a day and an evening and now the morning here. I think you all have a sense of what a wonderful spirit and elan and forward motion there is among the faculty, staff, and students on this campus. And a lot of that is due to Jack's leadership, working with his leadership team. But I think it's been a remarkable turnaround in the time I've watched UW-Parkside. Regent Falbo and I had breakfast this morning with a number of students who are here following in his footsteps at his alma mater, and he said to them, "Oh, you know what? Do you have anything that's bothering you about Parkside? What kind of things you want to tell us?" And there were about 5 or 6 of them, and they kind of looked around and said, "Well, no, we really like it here." So I thought that was testament to the great work, Jack, that you have done, and we thank you for that. And we're looking forward to this wonderful presentation. I think we all know that, again, Parkside has a justified reputation for university engagement, reaching out to the community around it, and also having its students get involved directly in work outside the campus that ties directly back to their learning and their academic programs, mentored, sponsored in that effort by the faculty and staff here. And testament to the success of that kind of approach to education that Parkside has is the fact that the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching recently recognized Parkside, as we mentioned last night, as the only school in Wisconsin to have earned Carnegie's Community Engagement classification. And that really is a national affirmation now of the campus's commitment in 2 main areas: curricular engagement and outreach and partnerships. Today we'll learn more about all of that from the presentation that Jack and his colleagues will present us. So Jack, welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you on this issue.
Thank you, Kevin. And in the spirit of the Irish, as you said, can't speak well of each other, I won't say anything public about you.
Appreciate it.
But today I'm just here to introduce 3 brief presentations. The first one will be by our Dean for Community Outreach and faculty member John Skalbeck, who combined in outreach relative to water quality research and have obtained 2 new sites, one from the city of Kenosha and one from the city of Racine, to do their research and do environmental education right on the sites. The second presentation will be by 2 students that will show what the service learning is all about. They will basically present studies that they've done for Modine, which is one of the big companies in the area, and it's a marketing study. So Thad Gavron and Saba Mosita will be presenting that research to show what outreach service learning for students really can do, and I think you'll be impressed by the fact that they do real research on real issues and bring it back to the classroom and discuss it with their teachers and get insights for their own future. And by being good researchers and good marketers, they've convinced Modine to continue for another semester. So this is a really good project. The second presentation by students will be by Patrick Leach, who will show you a lab study that he's been doing with a variety of professors on campus. This one in chemistry, even though he's a biology major. And he'll be going on to graduate school at Madison in entomology. So we wanted to show you the variety of excellence we have here in our academics. I think all of you know the profile of our campus, and you've heard that repeatedly when we talk about the campus. But what we wanted to emphasize on your visit here, and you see it everywhere, is the academic excellence of our faculty and staff and our students. Because our students are engaged with the research that the faculty are performing and basically learn from it, learn from their engagement in the communities. And the communities obviously are much better for our students' presence. Not that they bring their knowledge to the communities, but they take from the communities the knowledge that is out there and bring it back to the classroom. So this is what we're about, and this is why we were named with the Gates University, because we really value the service learning component of pedagogy, which I think is the new pedagogy of the future, where the fact that, like it or not, our students say that experience in the field was some of their best experiences they've ever had at college. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dean Tom Schwabalt and Professor John Spellbeck.
Good morning. As Chancellor Keating mentioned, my name is Tom Schnabelt. I'm the Dean for Community Engagement and Civic Learning. And before we get into talking about two exciting new partnerships, I wanted to give a little foundation about the community campus partnership work that we do here. President Riley already mentioned that we received the Carnegie classification that recognized the outstanding work that we're doing in this regard. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention are the fact that the Dean's position was a recent creation. It was created back in 2005, and I actually report to the Provost, which is something that's kind of unique. And the idea there is that we're not simply doing outreach work to fulfill this service mission, but we're attempting to link our learning and our knowledge discovery mission, the research mission, with that outreach effort. We have created something called the Center for Community Partnerships. That was created back in 1997. It brought together a number of different outreach and community service learning types of endeavors. We've organized ourselves around three functional teams: the community-based scholarship and nonprofit development team, the professional and continuing education team, and community dialogues. And I want to give you a sense that the support for the center is actually fairly diverse. Roughly a quarter of it comes from the University of Wisconsin-Parkside. Another quarter of it comes from our colleagues, the University of Wisconsin Extension, and the remainder of that actually comes from the community in the form of grants, contracts, and partnerships that we have with local community members. So you've heard about the Carnegie Foundation for the classification. We also received last fall the President's Civic Honor Roll, which is a recognition of the outstanding community service work that our students are doing. So with that said as a background, John and I are here today to talk about two really exciting partnerships that actually came to us as much from the community as from us. These two centers, CEDAR and REC, and we have John to actually thank for those lovely acronyms, share common goals. The goals are briefly to increase and improve K-16 public access to environmental education opportunities. We want to support interdisciplinary environmental research. We also want to demonstrate innovative and ecologically sound residential and commercial applications. And then finally, and probably most importantly, simply building awareness and an appreciation of the Great Lakes and connected watersheds in the area. So we're going to show you a few pictures of these centers. This center actually evolved. Basically, a group of us went down and started looking at some buildings that Kenosha had fallen into disrepair. And Kenosha was actually saying to the community, we need folks to come and tell us what they think they might be able to do with this. Well, we looked at the bottom level of the Kenosha, the Southport Beach House here, and thought this would be a wonderful opportunity for us to do some environmental education work. It's located right on the beach. It's on the National Registry of Historic Buildings. And the other reason that this is a really good opportunity for us is simply what this is around. Downtown Kenosha is just north of this particular photograph. I didn't take that picture. Google did. There's a city park there. You have the Southport Beach House, which is located on a significant piece of beach. There's a water treatment facility. There's a Kenosha sand dunes and low prairie. And one of the things I found out last week is that there's actually an ancient old-growth forest buried beneath that sand dune. And then also within walking distance, we have the Chilwaukee Prairie. So there's a lot of different opportunities for our students and our faculty to be engaged in some research and educational activities at this particular center. And I'm going to turn it over to John to tell the next part of the story about the rec center.
Well, how the rec center came about was I had the opportunity to go to the EPA National Beach Conference in Niagara Falls in October. I was presenting a paper that was a collaboration with the City of Racine's Health Department on beach advisories at some beaches in Racine and Kenosha. And Mayor Gary Becker from Racine was also at that meeting as a panelist, and he had made some interesting comments about trying to get environmental education to underrepresented communities in urban environments. So during the cocktail hour, I seeked him out to talk to him more about that issue, as well as to pick his brain about increasing our chances for getting funding through the Wisconsin Coastal Management Program for our Kenosha Southport Beach House. And in the process of explaining what we plan to do in Kenosha, he made the comment to me, well, why not put one of these in Racine? And I said, well, it's a function of the fact that Kenosha has a building. And he said, well, I have a building. So Tom and I took a look at this building, and right away we saw that it was an ideal location for another environmental education outreach program. It's located right on the Root River, which is served with a bike path or a pathway that connects to the Lake Michigan pathway. And it's got a boat ramp, and the facility itself has plenty of space for boat rentals. And so what came to mind for us was we could combine recreational opportunities to the community through canoe or kayak rentals, bike rentals, get them on the river or adjacent to it on the pathway, and then use that opportunity to expose them to environmental education programs, as well as being a center for nearby schools to participate in whatever kind of environmental education programs they might wish to use. So we've got a grant from the Wisconsin Coastal Management Program to kick this off, and then what we learn and develop at this facility, we can then parlay into Kenosha to apply at the Cedar Center.
So just to wrap up with our next steps, we actually received two coastal management grants for the projects. One for Kenosha, which is more about renovating or restoring the building to a place where we can actually bring folks into it. And then, as John mentioned, we're going to be developing educational materials for the Racine Center. We're also looking to expand our partnerships. I've already, just last week, had a conversation with a high school principal in Kenosha who's just thrilled about the opportunity of having his kids be at the Cedar Center. And we've talked with the folks at Riverbend that we're going to have probably 2,000 to 3,000 students, elementary school students, working through the rec center at Racine in the fall. But we're also wanting to build the partnerships with governmental agencies and then local environmental groups, so we're going to be having some public meetings around that. Next is connecting to our teaching and research. You're about to hear some from the SEG Center. We're actually going to have the SEG Center working to develop some business plans to try and work with us to try and have these things also be about economic development in those downtown areas. With support from Campus Compact, we're hoping to have an AmeriCorps Vista member working with us to build the capacity. And then lastly, simply looking to more external support for these projects. So with that, I would like to turn it over to our students. Right. Okay. So, and thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you today about these important initiatives.
Hello?
Tom?
All right, good morning and welcome, Regents and distinguished guests. My name is Thad Gabrin. I graduated here undergrad last spring, and I will actually be graduating with my MBA from Parkside this spring. Brief little background on what we're going to go through today. Introductions, which we've already done. A little background on Modine Manufacturing Company. We're going to go through our project charter and plan, our deliverables, our challenges. A little demonstration of what we gave to Modine, as well as an open up to some questions we had. Our project team consisted of not only Saba and myself, but our project advisor, Brad Piazza, who is the Assistant Dean of the School of Business and Technology, as well as 4 other students, 2 of whom are with us today, over in the back. Second here. Working with Modine, we had 2 client contacts who were mid-level managers, Dave Lidister and Nancy Wang, who were there whenever we had questions or we needed advice or guidance on the project. Modine actually celebrated their 90th anniversary this past summer. They're over a $1 billion company that specializes in basically any kind of heat transfer or cooling that you would need, from commercial products such as refrigerators, can't think of the name, furnaces, up to cars, things like that. Basically, Modine came to us because they wanted to get into the military vehicle market, but they really had no knowledge of what was out there in terms of companies, products, offerings, things like that. So to help them understand this market, we broke it into 3 steps, which would be locating key customers, their competitors, and then once we have all these people identified, performing a market analysis of these companies. The goals of this project were to identify the military vehicle market, both in terms of size and dollar-wise. You see the acronyms up there. PTC is powertrain cooling, EC would be engine cooling, and then PTM is passenger thermal management. These are the 3 areas, automotively speaking, that Modine handles. Then identify the heat transfer competitors and products being offered, who's currently in the market, what are they currently doing. And then once we have all these broken out, perform a market analysis and give them some relevant recommendations. Our deliverables were a high-level summary, kind of an executive summary, if you will, that they could briefly look at and get a snapshot of the industry. Detailed database, which took the high-level summary, went into great detail, which I will demonstrate later. And then a market analysis, again, for 3 seconds. Using Microsoft Project, you can see the project plan we laid out, estimating the total project in terms of hours and resources, and then we laid the Gantt chart too, which helped us to make sure that we were on track, keeping consistent with what we guaranteed Modine we would deliver. This is kind of a supply chain breakout of what Modine does. They're kind of interesting in that they're a component provider. They don't provide the final product. So there on the left you can see Modine and who their competitors would be as part suppliers. Then they supply to the manufacturers, who would then end up supplying to the market. The X and Y values you see there, X are numbers of units that Modine could sell to their customers, and then in turn what the customers could sell to the military or foreign militaries. And the Y represents the dollar values that they would receive. This is fully functional, and Modine actually does plan to use this to make some estimates and forecasts going forward.
To begin our research, we first had to compile a list of domestic and international customers. And we worked with our clients and other Modine employees to develop these lists. And then our next step was to sit down with our clients and develop a template in Excel and work out what each piece of information that they wanted to find out about all the truck manufacturers. After we had compiled all of our information into these templates, each team member had taken a couple of customers and competitors. We went back to our client, who said that for the information that we couldn't find, he would distribute it to his team at Modine and see if they could fill out the information that they could possibly find. The type of feedback, number of vehicles manufactured, as well as sales information, was two pieces of information that was very difficult for us to find. Modine employees, we worked with them to We actually had sales reps working with these customers to see if that they could find this information as well. The customers were not willing to share this information with us. I'm assuming they just didn't trust us. So we had to go about another way to find this information. We'll take Oshkosh Truck as our first example. Oshkosh Truck is one of Modine's largest customers, and we approached them as well. The sales rep approached them, and they said that they would not give us any information. The only way to get this information would be to track back sales history and identify the radiator that was specifically designed for each truck at Oshkosh, and total up the number of radiators to come up with our number of units manufactured for Oshkosh. These files had to stay at Modine. We worked with the engineers to identify which radiator was designed, went back to the sales history file, sorted it out by the year that we wanted it, and totaled up the number of radiators or charged air coolers, and arrived at our final number. Unfortunately, we only had this file for Oshkosh. For other customers that did not have this file, we did have a contact at International who was willing to give us some information, but not all of it. We did, as well as looking personnel and the contact at Allison Transmission. All of our contacts suggested that we purchase secondary data James Defense Journal. At our request, Modine did purchase it for us. It is an electronic search engine online, and James Defense Journal provides technical descriptions and specifications for every truck manufacturer, national and internationally. The team, our first step was to set up a WebEx conference with a rep from James to understand how we could fully use this search engine to get the information that we needed. One of our deliverables, as Dad mentioned, was the high-level summary. Here's a snapshot. We only had enough time to complete a high-level summary for the domestic side since we see the subscription so late in the semester. To the left, you see all the customers, and they're broken down by the two divisions, PTC and PTM, then forecasted out to 2010 in terms of units and sales, both countries of the manufacturing. Some of the recommendations that we came up with as a team for Modine would be to purchase more subscriptions of James. The subscription that we purchased was kind of like a starter for us. The next step would be to purchase a forecasting journal to confirm the numbers and to work even further. We also suggested that the clients should set up a WebEx conference with James so that they could learn about the search functionality once this project handed off. And we encouraged them to update the database that we had developed and designed to keep this going. And we also have recommended that this project be continued this semester so that we could focus more on completing the international group. And they like that idea. So this semester, a team of 5 students, including myself, are working on completing that. Some of the challenges, this project was large in terms of scope. We had a lot of information that we were dealing with, and in terms of how we wanted to analyze and organize this information was a huge task for us. The information that we needed to find was very complex, and sources of information that need to be kept at Modine with our schedule and everything was hard for the whole team to get to Modine to look and use the files. And the James Defense Journal was only a single user license, meaning that only one team member could log on to the James Defense at a time. And that's well privately held companies around the country. And each team member, as I mentioned earlier, takes a couple of companies as well as competitors in search for their information. If we had just handed off all of our Excel files to Modine, they would have had over 100 Excel files to work with. So my team and I developed a database using Excel so that it was easy for them to navigate as well as maintain. This database started off with a blank Excel spreadsheet. By using Visual Basic Application Programming, we created forms that would make it easier for Modine to use. All of our project documentation is located in this database, and then we have the two teams we broke up into domestic and international, all the information that they had requested. Here's our list of domestic customers we have first looked at. One part of the one task was to find the basic information where each customer is located. Here's the customer research template that I had talked about earlier. All the specifications for each truck manufactured at each location. And as you go on further to the right, we're also studying the competitors at the same time, identifying from Modine who is supplying which components of each truck. The supply chain model referred to this sales forecasting calculator that we had developed with the help of Dr. Charles Lonnie and Dr. Sandra Panning of the business school. One of our recommendations was that Armor Holdings had a lot of potential, and we felt that Modine should make a strong effort to go after them. So we had estimated that if they make 5,000 units at $120,000 a piece, there's $600 million worth of sales for Armor Holdings. Meaning for Modine, if we just look at the PTM division, if one component is $2,500 a piece, each truck, we broke it down into 3 different cases, each at a different probability percentage, and came up with, and after a few calculations, came up with potential sales for Modine. And there's $4 million in sales that we calculated that is out there for Modine. We had also kept track of customer activities for Modine. And what I mean by activities are what is the customer doing? Are there any new contracts that have been awarded, or any new business, or any new research and development or technology? Each team member went online, searched the news releases on their corporate websites, as well as other sources from our library here, and found information that we thought that Modine would find pertinent. And then we also, in this form, just had assigned categories that we could assign it to a certain category, and then Modine would come back here and search by, which customer they had wanted to look at and which category they had wanted. So it makes it easier for them to use. Not only them, but other employees as well throughout the company. And the same goes for international as well as competitors. And here's a list of competitors as well. This concludes our presentation, but just something I wanted to know was that Modine is using this information currently. Not only our clients, but other employees throughout the company are using this to develop their strategy for 2007 and 2008. A lot of people are very pleased with this, and I can tell that by just how pleased they are that they're willing to continue with this method. So, this time I'd like to open it up to any questions.
Regents South.
First of all, I want to congratulate you on but you've done something that the whole business is compensated. Is there any consideration to the fact that this could be compensated?
It doesn't include the situation in the pocket.
You're offered.
Actually, yeah, a bit of a side note. This past summer, I just had to tell they flew both heading cruise ships with me.
Any other questions? I have a question. Did you sign confidentiality agreements?
Yes, we did.
And I'm assuming you've created kind of a platform of a relationship. Is there some follow-up, other courses, other classes, other individuals?
For Modine, this is actually our 3rd project. The semester before, we had worked with some of our MBA graduates who are now employees at Modine. And currently we're actually working, Brad is working with HR at Modine to have Modine become a corporate member of the FSC Center. So that's going to be that. And there's also another project on deck for next fall.
You said there were 2 other students. Could you introduce them? Could they stand up?
That's
Any questions? Any other questions? Well, thank you. That was very interesting, and it's wonderful.
Good morning. My name's Patrick Leash. This marks my 4th and final year here at UW-Parkside, as well as my 2nd year doing research in astrobiology with Dr. Barrett Kolb at the chemistry department. Astrobiology is a multidisciplinary field that combines both chemistry, biology, elements of geology, as well as physics, to look for signs of life elsewhere in the universe. Particularly, I study organosilicates, which are organic compounds bound to silicates. Silicates are things such as glass, sand, most rocks, which contain basically silicon and oxygen. Some general objectives of our research: we want to be able to identify organic compounds on things such as meteorites and possibly even Mars without having to destroy the samples. Modern chemical analysis, often what you do is you have to take a chunk of, say, or you have to basically dissolve it and then you can analyze it. But if we have Mars rocks, we don't really want to dissolve those. They're very valuable samples. And we're trying to do this with a technique known as infrared spectroscopy, abbreviated IR. And we're also looking at these organic compounds. If we were to find them on, say, Mars, are they a signature of either past or present life? So the significance of our research, as I just mentioned, we have missions to Mars and meteorites, and the next mission to Mars will be in the year 2013. It will have an infrared device on there, and so we're looking for a method so that they can merely scan the Martian surface and see what's up there, what type of biomolecules. Another relevant issue is NASA's Stardust mission. This is a recent mission that returned to Earth, landed in Utah about a year ago in January. What this mission did is it flew behind a comet, actually scooped up small dust particles known as IDPs, or interstellar dust particles. And these dust particles consist of two main things: silicates, that is, little pieces of sand or rock, and organic compounds. And so NASA has actually contacted us to use some of our samples as model systems for the analysis of that. And finally, our research is also relevant to some issues in geology, where we have rock coatings, such as on Mars. It's these desert environments, and there are coatings on the rocks made of silicates and also containing metal ions and organic compounds. And we're looking for a way to figure out, are those coatings created by abiotic or biotic means? So some of the materials I look at are things, amino acids, which build the proteins in our cells, sugars, Maillard products. Maillard products are a set of products from the reactions between the amino acids and sugars. Whether you know it or not, you've actually all made these Maillard products. Whenever you put a roast in the oven, you get kind of that brown caramelized stuff on the outside that gives the meat its flavor. Those are actually some of the Maillard products. So whether you know it or not, what you make in your oven is actually happening, or something very similar to that is happening on meteorites. We can form metal complexes of these products as well, which may play a role in the rock coatings. Acid halides, alcohols. ATP and AMP are molecules that play a role in the energy cycles of cells. So we're also looking at those, as well as DNA. I ordered some DNA earlier this week. We're going to look at that. What I do is I use a substance called sodium silicate. You can think of it basically as liquid silica gel. You buy your pair of shoes, there's a little packet that says "do not eat." It's a white powder in there, which contains basically silicon and oxygen. I pretty much have a liquid form of this. I add these compounds to it, and that liquid will polymerize into various gels. It can be a very hard or a soft oozing gel, or a rubbery one. And when we add these compounds, we believe it follows either two patterns: entombment or chemical bonding directly to the silica. In entombment, what we believe happens is the silica solution rapidly polymerizes and merely surrounds any organic molecule. So there's no direct covalent chemical bonding between our organic molecules and the silicon. And here's a picture of it. So we just have this matrix of silicon, oxygen, and so forth, and stuff's merely trapped inside. And this is important because on meteorites, let's say if there had been some type of microbial life form up there, even millions of years ago, this can protect those molecules from inside the cell. If you leave those molecules out, they can be degraded by things such as gamma radiation and X-ray radiation, which are common in space. Similarly, if you want an analogy, we were talking about wine at breakfast. If you leave a bottle of wine out, it oxidizes and doesn't taste so good. So the organic molecules on meteorites, they will also oxidize and break down over time. This can be a way to protect them. A second possibility is that we have a direct covalent bond formation with the silicon. And in this case, we'd see silicon-oxygen-carbon bonds. And we are looking at this using the infrared spectroscopy technique to figure out the difference. So I'm going to show you a few of my samples. The main point I want to tell you about is that each of them look different. Fair amount of the time, they're these whitish kind of rubbery gels. Sometimes no gel forms at all, particularly with sugars. Often they're colored. They can range from yellow to reddish to dark brown, even black. But the take-home message is that each of them looks different. And so we are using the infrared spectroscopy technique to try and tell the difference between entombment and the chemical bonding. And so I'm going to show a few spectra to describe what infrared spectroscopy is in about 20 seconds. Basically, we take a laser beam of infrared light and shine it at a sample. The sample will absorb this light, and we will get a spectra which corresponds to certain frequencies of that light that correspond to either stretching or bending of chemical bonds. And so we end up noticing a small amount of entombment in some cases. So if we look here at the spectra, we see a broad peak in this region, which corresponds to the silicon peaks, both silicon-oxygen-silicon and some silicon-oxygen stretching. And other than that, there's nothing too extraordinary about this. It probably doesn't look like a whole lot, but I've done hundreds of these, so I can kind of tell what's there. And if you notice right here, we don't see a whole lot. And then in this one, we see some small peaks here. In this region, right about 3,000 reciprocal centimeters, that's the region where we have carbon and hydrogen stretching, which tells us we do have, in fact, some organic molecule trapped in here. And that's why we can confirm that there is some entombment. The main peak over here, we believe, is silicon-oxygen-silicon. We don't really see a silicon-oxygen-carbon peak, which tells us it's not the chemical bonding, it is entombment. So here's some of the interpretation from the literature. We have both silicon-oxygen-silicon and silicon-oxygen-carbon bonds in the same region, which I'll talk a bit more about that in a little bit, but that can cause some problems. And then we have other silicon peaks at slightly lower frequencies. So the problems, like I just said, the silicon-oxygen-silicon peak and the silicon-oxygen-carbon peak, if they're in the same region in the spectra, they can be very hard to tell apart. Another thing is that peaks associated just with silicon tend to be about 5 times stronger than those with carbon. So if we had just, let's say, a relative peak about that tall with carbon, if we had the same amount of silicon, it might be that big and completely overwhelm and hide that smaller carbon peak. So we're trying to fix this by the method using deuterium oxide, which is essentially heavy water. A lot of this was used back in the 40s for the Manhattan Project to develop the bomb. It's still used today throughout sciences, biology, chemistry, physics, use a lot of deuterium oxide. And we use 2 methods. One is we took my preformed gels and heated them with this material, the deuterium oxide. Or the other method would actually work better was I started using the deuterium oxide to dissolve my organic molecules to start with and then form these gels. Okay, when we use the deuterium oxide, we see shifts in the peaks in our spectra, which help us in our analysis. Another important point is that these compounds each react differently with the deuterium oxide. That is, an amino acid reacts differently than an alcohol and so forth. So, some general conclusions. We believe amino acids, alcohols, things like that follow the entombment mechanism. As I showed you that spectra, we saw a small amount of peaks in there, but no silicon-oxygen carbon peak. Furthermore, we believe sugars actually do form covalent bonds, so we'd see silicon-oxygen carbon peaks in the spectra. Basically all the samples, like I said, they're all different. They look different in the pictures, and they react differently when we do the deuterium exchanges. Another interesting side note is that with the deuterium exchanges, organic molecules which are found on meteorites are already enriched in deuterium, which makes our analysis more relevant to NASA's goals. And a real important thing from our research is that we found that the band assignments in the literature, which date back to about the early 70s, might not really be correct. We believe that the peak associated with carbon is actually at a fairly higher frequency compared to silicon-oxygen silicon bond, which actually will make interpretation easier for us and for NASA. So a few acknowledgments. I'd like to thank the Wisconsin Space Grant Consortium, which has funded Dr. Kolb, my research advisor, with a grant. I had also written my own grant through that organization, as well as received a scholarship from them. They get their funding from NASA. I'd also like to thank NASA for analyzing some of our samples. I actually have some shipping out in about a week to a NASA lab in France. I also like to thank Parkside for their URAP program for research stipends. And to show you accomplishments from our lab, this is from last year. I published 2 peer-reviewed articles from my research this past summer, as well as numerous poster presentations and abstracts. And this is for just research this year. I will be having 3 more articles published in peer-reviewed journals this summer, as well as upcoming poster presentations. So, any questions? I'm an undergrad. I haven't graduated yet.
Peggy?
I thought it was, I didn't see all of it, but what I saw was amazing, and I just want to know, what are you going to do with all of it?
Well, this is, my research with meteorites and stuff, I really do it just for the sake of doing it. I mean, why did people climb Everest? Because it's there. I feel the same kind of way about this. I'm actually going into entomology. During the summer, this is the research I do during the school year. During the summers, I do field biology research with insects, and that's what I'm going into for my master's, is entomology.
Thank you very much. And I always wondered what entombment was.
That's a presentation, and I hope you get a flavor of the excellence we have here at Parkside, both in field studies and in the lab traditional studies. And it was very hard to select the students to present because there are so many of the projects. If you have a chance, look at all the posters that are downstairs in main place and so forth. Each one of them represents a faculty-student collaboration. And I think there's over 30 of them down there. And if you were at the reception last night, you saw that continuous loop that was trying to give you a flavor of how much research goes on in this place. And research, as I honestly believe, is the best teaching tool we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to finish with the President's report, but then I'm going to ask Mark to take over for me. I have to be on a plane in O'Hare in about an hour and a half, so I'm not disappearing, leaving.
Thank you. That was just terrific. Chancellor Keating and faculty, staff, and students who participated, Tom, John, and students. Wonderful. I have a few short updates that I wanted to update the board with. on our work to further the growth agenda for Wisconsin. So let me do that. We learned yesterday about the good news in the governor's budget and what it could mean for the UW system, and I think these initiatives continue to garner support around the state. Last week I asked for support for the growth agenda in northeastern Wisconsin. Chancellor John Wiley and I went up there at the invitation really of the UW-Fox Valley Dean, Jim Perry, who was here yesterday, and some of the local business people in that area. We met with some business and community leaders to build on the work that Chancellor Wells and Chancellor Shepard have done in the northeastern part of the state. Had a chance to speak at the Fox Valley Chamber of Commerce, where a sizable crowd turned out to learn more about the growth agenda over an early morning breakfast, and then we went on to the later that day to the Rotary Club, the downtown Appleton Rotary Club, for their lunch meeting, and had a chance to speak there. And Jim Perry, he's not. He did a good pedagogical thing, which is also kind of clever for that luncheon talk. He had a map of the state with all of our campuses arrayed on it, so he could explain to the folks what the Appleton Rotary, what the system was. And as I said, John Wiley was there talking about some Madison issues, so he slipped in on his PowerPoint that John's picture had an arrow pointing to the Madison campus, and then he projected my face over the entire state and said, well, he's the system president. And it was, the appalling part was that I realized that my hairline had now receded to somewhere north of Ashland. Kind of like glacial recession. But it was a good session with the Rotary, and we also took time to meet with the editorial board of the Appleton Post-Crescent while we were there, where the editors expressed some real interest and support for the growth agenda. So in 2 more weeks, I'll be taking that road show up to Superior with Chancellor Erlenbach, as I mentioned. I think we have meetings now scheduled with campus governance groups and a session to talk about the growth agenda with news media. Chancellor Erlenbach and I will also visit with members of the area Chamber of Commerce, and we'll start a day early again with breakfast at the Sunrise Rotary. Since last month, when we last met, several more letters of support for the growth agenda have come into my office. I was pleased to learn that there's already broad support for the growth agenda in the Superior community. We heard from business leaders there, foundation board members, the mayor of Superior wrote in support, colleagues at Wisconsin Indian Head Technical College, and even a certain former Board of Regents president, Sky King Toby Markovich, wrote. All of them noting that the growth agenda and UW Superior's, in that case, liberal arts initiative, their initiative in the growth agenda, are important for retaining and graduating students who can use their UW education to strengthen Wisconsin's economy. We also received a letter from Dennis Kropp, the mayor of Menominee, Wisconsin, and he wrote to support the Eau Claire Stout CVTC NanoSTEM initiative as, quote, realistic and essential to develop and sustain a vibrant economy in the state, unquote. We've received some similarly strong support from the board of New North, which is the economic development organization that advocates for the larger Green Bay, Appleton, Oshkosh region. The group particularly wants to make it possible, they tell us, for more Wisconsin adults to earn baccalaureate degrees. New North has now urged the governor and the legislature to make the Northeast Wisconsin growth agenda a high priority for the state budget. As you know, the budget season really has now officially begun in the legislature. The Joint Committee on Finance has scheduled public hearings around the state, as I think we mentioned yesterday, for the end of March and the beginning of April. And members of the committee will begin their statewide sessions on March 20th with an event scheduled at the UW-Milwaukee campus. And later that week, on March 22nd, as I think we also mentioned yesterday, the committee has scheduled a session at the Capitol for a formal discussion about the UW systems budget. So I'm planning to attend that session along with Regent Walsh. You would all be more than welcome if you wanted to come and join us. Then the committee will take public testimony in areas like DeForest, and Chippewa Falls, and Prairie du Chien, and Rhinelander, ending up with a session in Green Bay on April 12th. And that day, on April 12th, we'll be just down the highway, Highway 41, for a meeting at UW-Oshkosh. But Regent Crane, you mentioned interest in now having some sense of what the Regents individual and as a board's role is, and we will be talking to you about that between now and the next meeting as these hearings get started in earnest. It's our plan that legislators at these sessions will hear from even more citizens who support a substantial reinvestment in the university. As I've gone around and made visits at the legislature, I've been urged repeatedly as these hearings come up not to simply turn out, again, ourselves, wonderful people like Regents, but real people who are not employed by the university, but who want to speak up and say how important the future of the university is for their lives, for the state of Wisconsin. So we'll be working to do that as well. And I'll continue as we get more statements of support and activities, support activities going to keep this board informed. I just wanted to conclude now with one other very positive event that's coming up next Wednesday. It's the Business Summit on 21st Century Skills. This is a partnership really between the PK16 Council and Competitive Wisconsin, an effort across the sectors in education to sit down and listen to what business leadership across the state says they want in terms of the graduates of both schools and universities. Libby Burmaster on the PK16 Council has taken the lead in putting this group together. She now was telling me yesterday that we have a very, very strong business presence at this summit coming up next Wednesday at Monona Terrace. And that's, as you know, one of the difficult things to do. Very often when we have these education business summits, we wind up with a lot of education people there and not so many business people there. Well, I think the way we've structured this, we've been able to attract a lot of strong business leadership because we have said to them we're going to listen to what they have to say about what they want from us and in the students who we educate. But with that, Libby, would you like to say a word or two more about the event?
Yes, as President Riley said, we're really looking forward to this event next Wednesday. We do, as of yesterday, have over 190 business and commerce representatives coming to the Monona Terrace. We did structure this just as Kevin said, and the we is Kevin Riley, Dan Clancy of the Technical College System, Rolf Wagenke of the Independent Colleges and Universities, and myself, working with the leadership of Competitive Wisconsin. And we've structured this so that we have some very high-powered business leaders who are going to facilitate roundtable discussions among what is now over 190 business reps. So it should be very encouraging. It is what we are asking them to do is to provide the first step for us in answering the question, what is their expectation for the knowledge and skills that they believe this year's 8th graders in Wisconsin should develop to be ready for jobs in their companies 5 years from now and 10 years from now. So conceivably when they're a high school graduate or when they would have their BA degree. We're going to put them through an interactive process of identifying those knowledge and skills. And that will then inform the process, a major process that we are embarking in the state of Wisconsin of reviewing the K-12, what are called the model academic standards in all of the disciplinary areas. And what model academic standards are, and every state now under federal law is required to have those, they lay out what a student should know and be able to do at grade level. And then your state assessment system measures whether or not students have reached those standards. We're going to be working with a national group, the American Diploma Project, to not only align our model academic standards with the needs of the workforce, but for the first time also with the needs of higher education. And that'll be the first time that the state has ever gone through that process. And if the growth agenda is going to succeed in Wisconsin of increasing more baccalaureate degrees, it's going to start in the PK through 12 system, and so this alignment will be very important. So I'm pretty sure that invitations were sent to all regions, and Judith Crane is going to, I know, has RSVP that you're going to be there, so she perhaps could get information back to us as a Board of Regents as to how you think it went. But it's also open. We will entertain more. If in your economic development efforts in your regions there are specific people you would like to invite to this, please just contact either Kevin or myself, and they are certainly welcome still at this point, as are all regions.
Thank you, Superintendent Burmaster, and that concludes my report. Regent Bradley. Oh, sure.
Yes, we are. Julia Taylor, I know, is there. Some of the leaders. Now, Tim can't make it, Tim Sheehy, but he's sending reps. I work very closely with Gerard's group, the Milwaukee Partnership Academy, that Tim Sheehy and the mayor and Gerard are on, and they are all represented, all those. The facilitators are, I think, what are impressive in this group. It's Mark Buer and John Turinas and the people who are also connected. Well, John Turinas is connected with the M7. So we've gone to great lengths to try to connect all the dots so that a lot of the economic development efforts that are happening not only with M7 but throughout the state are incorporated into this. So, yeah. And as Danae is pointing out, there's a tremendous importance in this for Milwaukee, because Milwaukee is our only school district in the state of Wisconsin which is identified for improvement under the No Child Left Behind Act. So this is very important for it.
Libby?
Yes. Hi, Eileen.
Okay, can you hear me? You guys are kind of fading in and out. I get a lot of dead air going. But did I hear you say 195 businesses from around the state, or is it primarily Milwaukee?
They're from around the state.
Is there a list somewhere that we might be able to see so that if there are businesses we think would be useful to be there, we could make some contacts?
Yeah. We could send it to you electronically.
That'd be great.
Any other questions for Libby? Good. Thank you. Thanks for your report, President Bradley. We'll now move to have a report from the Physical Planning and Funding Committee. Regent Salas.
I thought that part of the reports was going to begin with the
Regent Salas, the order of the reports was preordained by President Walsh. I am just the messenger.
Vice President Bradley, as you know, yesterday the Physical Planning Committee met in an all-region session in this room. Thereafter, we went to the Lookout Lounge and had a joint session with Business and Finance that Regent Pruitt will elaborate on a little bit later. And we finally made it to 1501, room 1501 at the library. Now, when I was going to grad school at the University of Wisconsin, our libraries were like the 16th century medieval structures in the ground, like catacombs. The stacks at the Memorial Library were endless. I remember 4 or 5 floors. Here at Chancellor's Keating Place, the library's half a football field down, but we finally found room 1501, and very nice room. Thank you very much, Chancellor. Well lit and befitting the distinguished members of the committee surrounded by knowledge, Vice President Bradley. At the meeting where at the beginning of the session that I mentioned, the UW-Parkside presented their master plan. And it should be noted that one of our staff members, by the way, was partially responsible for developing that plan, which he worked in private business, and one of the reasons why it was so well done in my estimation. The plan emphasized the importance of creating a vibrant physical campus that supports the UW-Parkside diversity, access, and especially the success of its students. The plan is based on 3 principles: enhancing Parkside's image and identity through better vehicular pedestrian wayfinding and circulation, keeping the campus green and promoting an ethic of sustainability, and promoting a more unified campus community through careful planning and design. Chancellor Santiago, Mr. Vice President, didn't appreciate my remarks that you could fit his campus in the recreational area of the Parkside campus. I told him that we could build his office on the back 9 of the golf course, but he didn't bite. We thereafter moved to the Business and Finance Committee and covered that responsibility having to do with segregated fees, and Regent Pruitt will report on that in just a moment. The Fiscal Planning and Funding Committee then reconvened, and the minutes of the February committee meeting were approved. The following resolutions were unanimously approved by the Fiscal Planning and Funding Committee and now are presented as consent items. Resolution 13C brought the UW-Madison requesting authority to demolish the Peterson Building and the Food Research Institute for purposes of site development. And Mr. Vice President, the Peterson Building demolitions had been part of previous actions by this board when we authorized the expansion of the Chatham Museum, and the same with the Food Research Institute, and its relocation was also authorized some time ago. The resolution 13D, which is a request from Stevens Point to amend the campus boundaries and purchase an improved parcel of land for future development purposes. And it should be noted that Stevens Point is in the process of developing its master plan and has designated this small parcel of land as part of its master plan. These 2 resolutions were passed unanimously by the committee, and I now move adoption of Resolution 13C and 13D. Mr. President.
Is there a second? Been moved and seconded. Any request to remove either item from the consent agenda? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Assistant Vice President David Miller reported that the Building Commission approved about $14 million for projects at their February meeting. The funding breakdown for these projects is $4 million general fund supported borrowing and $10 million program revenue fund. One of the items in the agenda that was not available at the meeting yesterday, Mr. Vice President, is the 0709 capital budget. We have in that budget not only the advanced enumerations, but new enumerations for 0709 and carryover projects from 05, 07. In addition, we have a substantial amount of requests for our maintenance projects. The reason that these are not part of the report at this month meeting is because the Building Commission is not going to review our proposal as part of the 0709 capital project budget until March the 14th and March the 19th. But we look forward to having those available for the Board of Regents at the next month's meeting at Oshkosh. Mr. President, this concludes the report of the Fiscal Planning and Funding Committee.
Good. Thank you very much. Any questions of Regent Salas? Next item is the report of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee. Regent Pruitt.
Thank you, Vice President Pratt. I'm going to be sharing this report with with my colleague Regent Smith. The Business Finance and Audit Committee met, as Regent Salas indicated, in joint session with the Physical Planning and Funding Committee to hear recommendations of the Segregated Fee Review Follow-Up Committee. Stephen Summers, UW-Whitewater Deputy Assistant Chancellor for Student Affairs and the Chair of the Segregated Fee Review Follow-Up Committee, reported that the review group was comprised of 5 students, including Regent Shields, and 4 administrators from UW institutions. Deputy Assistant Chancellor Summers noted that the audit included 5 recommendations related to cash accumulation for capital projects, excuse me, expiration of debt service payments, a review of non-allocable budgets by the Segregated University Fee Advisory Committee, or SUPAC, identifying the segregated fee impact when capital projects are considered, and presentation of segregated fees in the annual operating budget. He noted the recommendations were designed to strengthen Regent policy and to provide a well-articulated and well-implemented plan for student involvement in setting of segregated fees. We had, I think, a very lively and positive and good discussion, no doubt encouraged by the presence of our colleagues from the Physical Planning and Funding Committee, who added and enriched the whole experience for all of us. And after that, the committee came, I think, to consensus on 2 amendments to the resolution. One, upon the suggestion of Regent Salas, was to reinsert the notion of students helping to formulate allocable segregated fee budgets, and the resolution was amended to reflect that important principle. The second was followed I think another very productive discussion on the importance of transparency in terms of segregated fees for students. And so we changed the resolution to eliminate the notion of redirecting segregated fees from one purpose to another. It was the strong feeling of the committee that if and when a segregated fees that were intended for debt service reach an end, that there should be a positive decision made as opposed to simply a redirection of those fees to some other purpose. So on behalf of the Business Finance and Audit Committee, who unanimously approved Resolution 1.2A as amended, I now present that as a consent item, and I move the adoption of Resolution 1.2.A, recommendations from Segregated Fee Review Follow-Up.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Mike?
Chuck, if you have a little time, I wondered if you or someone else was involved in it. I've been on the board, I've never really had a discussion of how, a general sense, of how it works, what exactly it's in terms of what the money is used for, what the students' role is. I know Tom has raised a lot of questions, but I just don't really understand the process.
I would be, although I must admit I feel a little bit like the last time I had this feeling was my oral exams. So therefore, given that feeling, I'm going to do what I couldn't do in my oral exams. I'm going to ask for a lifeline. Yeah, and here she is. I think. Let me ask Vice President Durkin to provide a little bit of a background.
There are, and I'll probably call on one of my campus colleagues sitting out in the audience to tell you how it really happens. But the student segregated fees are divided into 2 categories. There are the allocable segregated fees that usually support student organizations and student activities on campuses, and those fees, students have a lot of input and oversight and approval. But
everybody has to pay that. That's a mandatory.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And a lot of universities would call those student activity fees, something like that. Then the non-allocable student segregated fees have to do with student health, the debt service on like rec centers, They pay for some salaries of people working in those activities. And those the chancellor has the ultimate responsibility for, but the students provide a lot of advice and input. And in the revisions that we're proposing, we have sort of reaffirmed the importance of students developing those allocable segregated fee budgets, as well as provided for their input into the development of the non-allocable. So the recommendations strengthen the involvement of the students and more clearly articulate that, as well as they outline more transparency in the reporting of the segregated fee budgets to the board. So previously you would usually see the previous year's fee, and then you'd see the new year fee, and there'd be an explanation of the increase. But what we're proposing is that every portion of the fee is outlined so that you can see, you know, this activity, maybe it's for childcare, that's going up $2, something else is going up 50 cents. So you'll have a lot more detail when you get the annual budget in the future.
Is that part of their tuition bill?
As far as the bill, yes. I mean, it's incorporated.
But it's identified, but it's part of the tuition.
Yes. So that's
Students vote on some of these fees and not others, like the union at Madison, or how do you decide when they vote and when they don't vote?
Well, as far as the voting on capital projects, that was one of the areas that was thoroughly discussed by the committee, and because every campus has a little bit different campus culture, and there was a conscious decision not to mandate one form of student involvement in the future for capital projects, but every campus has a lot of involvement, and some of them use referendum, some of them depend upon their elected student government, you know, to represent the students, and the committee felt strongly that we should honor the different ways that it works for individual campuses. Yeah. Andy, I don't know if you want to add anything. Andy Soul was a member of the committee and obviously can speak firsthand to how it really works at a campus.
I'm the Vice Chancellor for Business and Student Services at UW-Parkside, and I have the honor of working with our campus segregated university. I think the way Vice President Durkin described it is very accurate. Let me try to just state it a little bit. Allocable fees are fees primarily for student activities that this allocation committee actually deals from the beginning of developing that budget through action, formal action by the SUPAC. On our campus, the SUPAC happens to be in our student senate. Some campuses have a separate body. Our campus is SUPAC Senate, which has representatives of the entire campus, on-campus students, non-campus students, non-traditional students. Everyone is represented there. So we do have a wide range of students involved as well as approval in that budget, which is then sent forward to the chancellor. And if he concurs that the budget is reasonable, appropriate, and moves us in the right direction, then it's sent through the system along with the Regents. Non-allocable fees, the process is a little bit different. We're dealing with expenses generally where there is less discretion. Debt service, once we enter into debt financing on projects, we may have 20 years worth of payments. It's non-discretionary, so therefore it's not subject to allocation by the SUPAC. It's part of a non-allocable budget. Many staff, employees of various operations, including student centers, the children's center, those staff commitments multi-year in nature. Some of those people have indefinite term appointments or multi-year contracts. So it's not really subject to allocation by a student group that says, we choose not to do that because the university has a contractual obligation that may extend for several years. So that's really the distinction between allocable and non-allocable. On our campus, when we develop non-eligible budgets, that's through a process of working with advisory boards or advisory councils for each individual population. So we have an advisory board for our student centers, which is comprised largely of students. The majority of them are students and students are still involved in the development of that review of that. But they don't have the same level of approval for it. It's more of a review and a recommendation in terms of what that budget should be because of the contractual obligations that service long-term obligations that are associated with it. So those recommendations then flow from the advisory board up to me as the chief financial officer of the institution. That's how we distinguish both types of focused and then the process forward.
Thank you, Chuck, for that explanation.
Thank you for asking the question. I could have done it just as well, but I thought it was important to share.
Regent Rosenzweig.
I actually just want to clarify just one thing, that I think it was the strong recommendation of the committee made up of the student and some of the financial officers from different campuses that felt, and I think input from other people at their hearings, that said that we shouldn't have a policy carte blanche for referendum on capital projects. It was not our committee, and I want to make that distinction because while I do support the resolution, I still have continuing and nagging sense that somehow we didn't really answer the students who came before the committee initially after the audit was provided for us and told of how they felt somewhat disenfranchised. So I just want to make that distinction. I think we've come to a resolution that is a consensus, and given the expertise of the people on that committee, we took the recommendation, but I still feel, somewhat uneasy about the fact that all students don't have the opportunity to speak through a referendum.
Could I just add that the recommendations of this committee, which again, was more than 50% students, and then the recommendations were vetted at all the campuses, the administration, as well as student government and United Council. So, and the comments did not come back, opposed to any of the recommendations that we put forward.
With the change at the top of the second page, where you will self-see after the debt service is completed, is that how often has that happened, that those have been reallocated, and does it change anything that's currently happening?
I think there.
I think people had indicated that without being clear that it wasn't that it was being redirected, it was that it was, say we were at the end of a 20-year bond payment, and then through the review process, they were making a conscious decision that that payment was no longer needed for debt service, but now we wanted to use a similar payment for something else. And so that Chancellor Keating, I think, used a good example yesterday where the students knew that their fee was going to be going down by a certain amount, but they had a new project that they wanted to support, and so in essence it was one coming off and a new one coming on.
Without a new process?
No, the process there was a new process, but it just appeared as though it was being redirected. So we wanted to clean that up so that was very clear that it was the old one was going off and a new one was coming on for a separate process that had
so it's not really
project.
Changing.
No.
All right.
I think that it is, on all these things, I think an important part of this process, which I think is a positive one, is trying to standardize, to sort of make fairly clear what region policy is on all these things across the board, not necessarily, you know, not necessarily fixing a problem as much as standardizing a process which hopefully will provide both some level of transparency and a good level of accountability in terms of this process, which is, I think, what we heard from the students and from others, you know, all along the way, is that, you know, they want to be involved in the process and they also want an accountable process. And certainly, if anyone ever had the idea to redirect a fee going forward, I think this policy makes it fairly clear that this board would regard that as a violation of that policy. So.
Regent Salas?
Yes, Mr. Vice President. When the audit was ordered and a number of regions spoke in its support, the Fiscal and Planning Committee began to develop a form, and I began to report to the body as a whole, or that is to the Board of Regents as a whole, any capital project that involved SUFAC activity, that you became aware of that more than 6 months ago, or that is, I and the members of the Fiscal Planning Committee, with the collaboration of staff, in particular Assistant Vice President David Miller, began to report to you as part of that process in the spirit of the transparency that is part of this final report and of the resolution that is before you, those activities. And I think that you're all aware that that has been ongoing. We didn't wait until the audit conclusion and the recommendations that are before you. Those activities have been reported in all capital projects that have involved segregated.
Any other questions?
I just want to say that I do feel comfortable with going ahead with this resolution from the student perspective, and also being an opportunity where yesterday we were able to groundbreak on a new student union, which I was a part of. And I think I'm going to disagree from what my dear good colleague Regent Rosenzweig said, and I think it should be left up to the campuses to determine whether or not they feel that it's a referendum process should be happening at their campus. I don't think that the Board of Regents needs to go in and worry about how River Falls or how Parkside or how Madison student governances are moving forward on capital projects, because it's their self-autonomy, and it's not our role to micromanage into those individual student government processes, and we should respect the roles that the campus administration and the student governance groups on those campuses operate. And but I do feel very comfortable with this, and I do thank the Business and Finance Committee for making those additions also to the resolution yesterday. And I will be voting in favor of this today.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carries. Regent Pruitt?
After the joint session, the committee reconvened, and the minutes of the February 8th meeting were approved as presented, and I now turn to my colleague, Regent Smith, for further news from the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee. Over to you, Regent Smith.
Thank you, Chad, for we next heard a presentation from UW-Parkside about administrative efficiencies and economic development. Chancellor Keating discussed administrative efficiencies achieved and how we had to restructure and cut administrative functions to meet required budget cuts. This institution contributes to the economic development of the economic corridor between Milwaukee and Chicago. He also talked about environmental stewardship activities that UW-Parkside is involved in. We were to hear an evaluation of targeted tuition programs and extension of the Return to Wisconsin program. Due to time constraints, that was deferred to our April meeting. We next heard from Frida Harris about the fiscal year 2007-2008 budget distribution adjustments for the first year of the biennium based upon the governor's budget. Associate Vice President Harris suggested allocation methodologies for funding of faculty recruitment and retention, the Lawton Undergraduate Minority Retention Grant and Advanced Opportunity Program, utilities, student technology fee, and the pay plan when approved, among other subjects. This resolution will be presented at the end of our report as a consent resolution. We next heard consideration of salary adjustments for several senior academic leaders. President Riley stated that last February the board endorsed a new process whereby periodically a review of individual academic leaders' salaries would be performed to determine whether there is a need for adjustment to recognize competitive factors or to correct salary inequities. The committee discussed and approved salary adjustments unanimously and enthusiastically for the chancellors at UW-River Falls, UW-Whitewater, and a provost at UW-Green Bay under this process. This resolution will also be presented at the end of our report as a consent resolution. Back to you.
A cold front moving in from we then looked at we then heard a report on options for board oversight of major information technology projects. This was an audit which was suggested and recommended by Regent Rosenzweig, and we thank her for that suggestion, because I think the committee and I think this whole board will find the report, if you hopefully have read it already or will read it, quite interesting and illuminating in terms of what has happened in the past and what happens elsewhere and what we might do going forward. Julie Gordon, Director of the Office of Operations Review and Audit, stated that the office analyzed oversight practices in higher education with a particular attention to large information technology or IT projects. The primary purpose was to be forward-looking to enhance board oversight. We are all aware of the problems that emerged in the APBS situation. I think we're all committed. I know the whole board is. I know the President Riley and all within the system are committed to ensuring that such a thing never happens again. And so that part of that process that we go through here is to figure out what additional steps or things that the Board of Regents could be doing to help ensure that does not happen. Director Gordon remarked that recent major IT projects at the UW system included the shared financial system, student administration system, the library system, the course management system, and the APBS program. Ms. Gordon commented that the review offered two main recommendations to strengthen board oversight of these projects. One, that UW system management should provide the Board of Regents an inventory of major IT projects scheduled, and two, that we should be provided regular status reports on project implementation. Chief Information Officer Ed Meechan provided several assurances to the committee about how things are being done differently today to enhance oversight of these large IT projects. The committee will be revisiting this audit and its recommendations once LAB releases its own state IT audit. And I just want to underscore that. One, we are not coming with any specific recommendations today to you, but we will be returning to the board and we will be coming forward with recommendations. But we thought it was far more appropriate to wait until the LAB audit came forward and we had their suggestions and ideas to incorporate into whatever might be recommendations going forward. So this is far from concluded and something that certainly I know the Business and Finance and Audit Committee would welcome ideas from our colleagues around the board as to what we might do going forward. Vice President Debbie Durkin reported that negotiations continue between the state of Minnesota and the state of Wisconsin on reciprocity, and that on the good news side, the state of Minnesota published an announcement on their website indicating that current and new students enrolling in the fall of 2007 would have at least 4 years to complete their undergraduate education under the current terms of the reciprocity agreement. There are continuing negotiations. We're all reading about them, but clearly this is good news for those Wisconsin students who are either currently or planning to attend a Minnesota institution in the fall of 2007. Vice President Durkin commented that current utilities estimates through January still anticipate a surplus. She commented that EdVest, the Wisconsin's 529 college savings plan, has now reached the $2 billion mark, in only 6 years since its launch. There are now more than 220,000 accounts in EdVest, and Wisconsin currently has the 13th largest Section 529 plan in the country. The Business, Finance, and Audit Committee unanimously approved the following resolutions, which I now present as consent items. On behalf of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee, I move the adoption of Resolution 1.2.E, the annual distribution adjustments, 1.2F, consideration of salary adjustments for senior academic leaders to address recruitment and retention challenges for chancellors at UW River Falls, UW Whitewater, and the provost at UW Green Bay.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? If not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Regent Pruitt?
Mr. Vice President, that concludes the report.
Good, thank you.
Just
Regent Simmons. By the way, Regent Simmons, if Patrick Leish is a student at UW-Parkside and you're a student at UW-Parkside, do you know everything that Patrick Leish knows about this?
No, and I had his brother in a class also, and he's equally as intelligent. So, and as you saw, his works up there, those were probably about as many papers as I handed in throughout college, and I'm sure there are professors that are looking for me right now, trying to find some of those papers. But
we digress.
I don't have focus very well, I guess, on those things. But my quick question was on the Midwestern Student Exchange Program. How many students are leaving Wisconsin to go study, say, at a Nebraska school or a Kansas school or Missouri school?
Regent Simmons, we did not have a chance to discuss that. That was the one item that we didn't have a chance to discuss. But we will speak.
Oh, I must have stepped up during that.
No, it's not. It's all right. It's probably we're finishing up one of those papers. But we were, we will be sure to ask that question and report back to you next month. You're interested in sort of the outflow. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Good. Any other questions for Regent Pruitt? Good. Thanks. Our next item is a report from the Education Committee.
Unlike my two colleagues, I'm ready because I kind of assumed I was next. Process of elimination, let's say, Mr. Vice President. I'm pleased to report the summary from yesterday's meeting of the Education Committee. We'll all recall that the Education Committee had an all Regents invited presentation regarding the Associate of Science degree Liberal Arts Transfer Program at Chippewa Valley Tech, and I will offer a resolution 11A as part of the consent agenda at the conclusion of my report regarding that. So for our afternoon meeting, which did get a late start, as all of the committees did, following approval of our minutes, we received an update on the University of Wisconsin Systems Waukesha study. Board of Regents received a report issued by UW-Milwaukee Chancellor Santiago and UW Colleges and Extension Chancellor Wilson, which examined three potential structures: 1, merging UW-Waukesha to UW-Milwaukee; 2, creating a new standalone 4-year campus; and 3, creating a university center at UW-Waukesha. The report found that the university center would be the most cost-effective option. President Riley and Dean Patrick Schmidt shared information on baccalaureate and master's degree programs already being offered at UW-Waukesha, including MBA programs from UW-Milwaukee and Whitewater, and the UW-Milwaukee Connections program, which offers undergraduate degrees in organizational administration, information resources, and communication. President Riley also noted that across the UW colleges, 50 to 70 baccalaureate degrees, depending on who's counting, are offered from UW 4-year institutions. In fact, we received 3 handouts describing numerous collaborative degree programs, agreements, and alliances between the UW colleges, and various 4-year UW institutions, as well as our tech colleges. And I would urge my fellow regents to, in fact, I would just make a request that all regents get copies of these documents, because these reports were quite illuminating and positive about what is already going on in the way of collaborative degrees, both at the undergraduate and graduate degree level. So I would like to make a request that all regents get a copy of those 3 reports, handouts. Chancellor Wilson noted that UW-Waukesha is not a standalone campus, but part of a 13-campus UW college system, which has shared administrative costs. They share a registrar and staff in areas such as financial aid, information technology, and human resources. For many in the room, that was kind of an illuminating factor also. I think there's an assumption that there are some cost efficiencies that can be attained through perhaps a merger by virtue of an assumption that each of the two-year colleges have their own staffs. Not true. So we were persuaded that there are no additional efficiencies from joining with UW-Milwaukee. UW-Waukesha offers top-quality faculty, small classes, the lowest tuition in the UW system, friendly and knowledgeable advisors, and a guaranteed transfer program. Dean Schmidt added that the campus is committed to change and looking at new models that utilize partnerships. Chancellor Markey discussed UW-Platteville's plans to offer engineering at UW-Waukesha, and Chancellor Saunders discussed the MBA program currently offered at UW-Waukesha and the discussions that have begun on offering a degree in education at Waukesha. Finally, Chancellor Santiago, what do I have here? Chancellor Santiago confirmed UWM's commitment to providing educational programs and degrees, both at the undergraduate and graduate level, to Waukesha County in ways that make academic and financial sense. Assistant Vice President Lynn Paulson provided informative background information, I know that's redundant, on the financial analysis that was done to arrive at the conclusion that a university center would be the most cost-effective. He outlined the assumptions built into the analysis. This was questions that had come up not only from various legislators, but also, as I understand it, but also from our committee. So Mr. Paulson did an excellent job of sort of filling in the information that led to the cost analysis contained in the financial report, and we appreciated that. Joshua Mann, Vice President of the United Council of UW Students, urged the board, and Joshua, as well as the other student who presented, Alan Stager, both were on the financial analysis committee, I guess I call it. What is it called? Financial Analysis Committee? Study group, thank you. Yep. So anyway, Joshua, as Vice President of the United Council of UW Students, urged the board to keep in mind the interests of students who attend UW-Waukesha for the academic mission and service it currently provides to students. In addition, Alan Stager, President of the Student Governance Association at UW-Waukesha, said, students across the UW colleges are watching to see how our university center model could impact services they are now receiving. Both students, I might add, poignantly and passionately advocated for the authentic and intimate class environment experience and for the preservation of the two-year college option that works for so many of our students as part of why they were inclined toward the UW Center concept, the University Center model. Carla Rutley, who spoke on behalf of the Waukesha County Action Network, otherwise known as WeCan, said her organization and university both agree that Waukesha County needs greater access to baccalaureate and master's degrees. She urged cooperation and enhanced communication with the Waukesha business community as plans move forward. Lee Essler, a resident of Waukesha County, encouraged the board, and I believe he was chair of the Homeowners Association. I think that's the right guy. Encouraged the board to approach the idea of expanding the UW in Waukesha in a manner that makes sure students can access a liberal arts education. He mentioned that the cost to provide mass transit between the UW-Waukesha and UW-Milwaukee campuses might be unmanageable for students and the universities. And he noted that if the campus were to expand, campus neighbors would be unlikely to support the idea of residence halls near UW-Waukesha. Tom Mihal, an attorney and a Waukesha County business leader, and as well as a graduate of UW-Waukesha, said he supports the idea of implementing a university center as one way to serve the community while preserving UW-Waukesha's core mission. President Riley then stated that the UW system will determine how else it can meet Waukesha County's needs by cooperating with Waukesha's business community to conduct a formal assessment of workforce educational needs as suggested in a letter from State Representatives Zipperer and Nass in a letter to the board this week that we all received. President Riley also agreed with Regent comments about the need to improve communication with the business community. Kevin, is there anything more you want to add at this moment to the full benefit? Not to put you on the spot. You were quite eloquent yesterday. Not that you wouldn't be today.
Repeat performance. No, I just want to reconfirm what Regent Davis is saying. I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding here. We have a lot of activity on the ground already in Waukesha at that campus. It is a university center functioning that way already. We will work more closely now as we go forward with this formal needs assessment that everybody agrees we need to do with local folks, business community, and others to try to figure out what additional needs are there that we haven't yet. So this is all a work in progress. There's some there now, and there will be more there in the months and years ahead, and we hope to come back to this board sometime this summer when we have the needs assessment done and get your kind of formal approval, stamp of approval on how we'll move ahead with the additional activity at that site.
Sure. So then we moved into the next item on the agenda, which was a presentation from UW-Stout, which is seeking designation as a polytechnic university. Interim Senior Vice President Rebecca Martin noted that the polytechnic designation builds on UW-Stout's rich history, will strengthen student opportunities, and enhance both branding and marketing strategies. Polytechnic designation has the full support of the campus and the community. Chancellor Sorensen described polytechnics as comprehensive universities offering professional, career-focused programs in the arts, social and related behavioral sciences, engineering, education, and natural sciences and technology that engage students in active applied learning, theory, and research. UW-Stout has the educational foundation already in place to be a polytechnic, and such a focusing, if you will, of its mission will allow it to both serve the needs of the state in educating its citizens and as a catalyst for economic development in the 21st century. Chancellor Sorensen went on to indicate that the designation will give the university the tools to become an even great institution, using the concept from the Good to Great book. Chancellor Sorensen introduced Professor Forrest Schultz, Faculty Senate Chair. I think he was here. Who did an eloquent job of describing UW-Stout's program growth plans in polymer and computer electrical engineering, nanotechnology, and bioinformatics. He cited that was kind of like the student's presentation. Right. Okay. He cited the active learning experienced by students who learn through engagement in real-world situations. He described the tech transfer activities that have a significant economic impact on Wisconsin's economy. Professor Schultz then introduced Christine Christofferson, a very impressive UW-Stout student. Ms. Christofferson described how she, even as a freshman, worked with faculty and research, and as a sophomore is working on her own research project. In her brief time at UW-Stout, she's gained a deep appreciation for the hands-on learning that she is experiencing. Chancellor Sorensen concluded the presentation by indicating that the campus has worked for a number of years on considering this designation, including input from external constituents and approval by faculty, academic staff, and student governance groups. We then move to item 3 on our agenda, which is the authorization to recruit for the provost and vice chancellor at UW-La Crosse. Elizabeth Hitch has been appointed Vice President of Academic Affairs at Utah Valley State University. She has been a great academic leader, including her recent service as interim chancellor, and I know she will be missed by many people across the UW system, throughout the state, and at her institution. Finally, we had a report of our Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, which was significantly condensed. We just plumb ran out of time because we wanted to be present at the groundbreaking. So with sincere apologies to those who waited so long to present the faculty research project at UW-Parkside, only to find that we made a decision to postpone that item until our next meeting. And our sincere appreciation for their patience in that regard. We made the decision to postpone that item, as well as the 2005-06 Minority and Disadvantaged Student Annual Report, which will be presented at our next meeting. So I have 3 resolutions approved yesterday by the Education Committee that I now present as consent agenda items for your action. Resolution 11A, approving the Chippewa Valley Technical College Associate of Science Degree Liberal Arts Transfer Program. Resolution 11D, supporting the designation of UW-Stout as Wisconsin's Polytechnic University. And 3, Resolution 11E, authorizing the recruitment of a provost at UW-Parkside.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? Mike? That would be 11D. Okay. With the removal of item 11D, any other requests for removal? Okay. All in favor of the motion with item 11D removed, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Now, there's a motion for item 11D. Mike?
I just had a question, and I'm sorry I didn't raise it yesterday because we were in such a hurry there at the end, which is the wording of this. That upon recommendation of the Chancellor and so on, the Board of Regents supports the designation. And my question is, shouldn't we authorize the designation as opposed to supporting it? Because shouldn't we have a say in, notwithstanding decentralized campuses, if somebody wants to go off on a crazy name, I think we want to have a chance. I don't think I support this one completely, but so I'm really questioning the concept here of our authority in the resolution.
Well, and I'm not the answer to that. We were told that that approval wasn't needed or necessary from us, and that what we were being asked to do was to support the designation, and we kind of...
I guess I don't agree with that.
Well, we're not changing the name of the university.
No.
We are simply saying that we are in support of them just using a tagline after the name of the university. So it is still UW-Stout. UW-Superior has a tagline saying, you know, we are the public, Wisconsin, the tagline is Wisconsin's Public Liberal Arts College. Now UW-Stout will say, we are UW-Stout, we are the Polytechnic University.
It's more of a branding than it is a name change. It is a way of being competitive with programs with other polytechnic universities who and it's a recognition of the true future mission, if you will, the current and more the future mission. You know, it's already my...
And I support that completely. I'm really just raising a different question as to what's our role in these taglines or the branding. Are people just free to do that, or should we have some coordinating say?
Couple thoughts in response to that. As Regent Bradley said, if it were an institutional name change, the board would have to authorize it. If it were the change of the name of a college on a campus, you actually need to authorize that. According to your current policies and procedures, it's not necessary that you authorize a designation of a brand in that sense. When Chancellor Sorensen and I discussed this, and I'll let him add to this, we decided that although that was not necessary, we would bring it forward to the board so we could get some formal sense of support, short of a need to authorize. But speaking personally, if the board wanted to go the next step, even though you don't need to, and authorize it, that would be wonderful too. But let me ask Chancellor Sorensen and then come back to Regent Crane.
I agree. We wanted the support to have kind of official sanction that we're not changing our mission. We are defining ourselves in a different group of peers nationwide. But the board wanted to authorize board support. Either way, we're satisfied with that. We felt that we could have probably, without any authorization or discussion, yet call ourselves a Polytechnic University, because we are in every way, shape, and form. We wanted official recognition so that it allows us to enter into a peer group nationwide on a more authentic level.
Regent Crane?
It seems to me that the validity of what Mike is saying is in the wording. It's the fact that it says Wisconsin's Polytechnic University. It does mean that it's distinct from the others. If it were just as a Polytechnic university, that it seems to me that that's different. But if we're
assuming that our campuses have different designations and that they are distinct from each other within the system, there is some reason to make that formal, it seems to me.
Any other discussion?
What do we do?
Well, there was just a question.
Yeah, I just raised the issue for future thought. I'm only concerned that there will be a time when one of the schools wants to adopt something very similar to another school or whatever. I think we ought to have some, but for the time being.
That's fine. Just, again, to perhaps provide more comfort here, when Chancellor Sorensen and I first started to talk about this, he and I agreed we would bring it for discussion to the Chancellor Group, and we did that, and so that concern that is somebody duplicating something, and he received unanimous and strong support from his colleague chancellors for this designation.
All in favor of the motion to approve item 1D, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Vice President, let me conclude my report by noting that the Education Committee meeting adjourned at 4:35, just in time to put coats on and be there.
And was that before the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee adjourned?
Absolutely, because we were able to observe them in meeting form through the window.
Good. Thank you for your report. Now I would like to call on Regent Falbo to present the resolution of appreciation to UW-Parkside. Mike? Please.
Right away to work. I did take offense to President Riley's comment about his hairline being in Ashland, especially when you come from Egg Harbor here. And thank you, the Chancellor's role, for not tripping me on the way up. As I witnessed Chancellor Wells try to take out President Walsh, I leaned over to him and said, "Sometimes it's comforting to know that your future's behind you." When Jack Keating first arrived at Parkside, we went on many calls together and looking for money, looking for introducing him to some business people down here and up in Milwaukee, and also recruiting foundation board members. And I would comment to the people that we met with that Jack was the new breed of chancellor. And they would lean over and whisper to me, "What did the old breed look like?" They missed that. That's not what I meant. What I meant by the new breed of chancellor is that he understood the importance of community engagement and involvement. He understood the importance of public-private partnerships. He understood the importance of being active and continuously marketing our wares and serving our communities. And along with the faculty, staff, and students that responded to the important things that Jack brought, I think Parkside was transformed. And as you've heard in the last few days, in some very, very positive ways. So thanks for that guidance, new breed. And with that, I'll offer a resolution. Whereas UW-Parkside has graciously welcomed the Board of Regents to the community for the board's first visit to the campus since 1999, and whereas UW-Parkside supports, embraces, and celebrates its diverse student population and has prioritized academic excellence and increased accessibility as the major tenets of its campus growth agenda for southeastern Wisconsin, and whereas UW-Parkside actively pursues community engagement and encourages its students and faculty to conduct work and research projects that benefit the region and its residents. And whereas Regents were impressed by the foundation for UW-Parkside's master plan for campus facilities and were pleased to participate in a groundbreaking ceremony for new campus construction. And whereas UW-Parkside has successfully instituted a brain gain strategy, educating area residents and encouraging them to remain in the region to strengthen the economy and communities of southeastern Wisconsin. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System thanks UW-Parkside for hosting the board's March 2007 meeting and commends Chancellor Jack Keating and all the campus, faculty, staff, and students for their roles in creating access and excellence at UW-Parkside.
You don't mean it. You don't mean it.
I would ask the minutes to show that that resolution was approved by acclamation. Thank you, Mike. Are there any communications, petitions, or memorials? Okay, any new business or unfinished or additional business? Okay, then I'd like to take a 10-minute recess, after which we will reconvene in this room and go into a closed session. Mike?
Don't have to read the motion.
There are box lunches going down by where you had your coats. You can take that with you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Aren't you going to go into closed session later?
After the 10-minute recess. Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I stand adjourned. 10 minutes. Good.
I did a lot of
I think we can
Segregate, please. Can we share what tuition is that's included with these?
So bad.
I think it's just nice to give you the assignment by opening my mouth.